Hello, I'm the Blonde Vet, and before we get started into today's video, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a practicing vet for 10 years. During that time, I've seen and helped a lot of animals, and this video series is just aimed for you at home to just give you a little bit more information about the most common diseases that our pets develop and some of the common signs and symptoms, and a little bit of information about how vets diagnose and treat the problems, to give you a little bit more information so that you can make the best choices for your pet. All the information in this video is not designed to diagnose or treat any diseases, so if you have any worries, it's best to just contact your vet. So today we're going to talk about one of the most common things that I see as a veterinarian, and that's itchy animals. About 1 in 3 of our clients when they come in has an itchy animal, so it is actually quite common. So what are the main signs of an itchy animal? So the first one is actually licking the paws quite a lot, nibbling the paws quite a lot, and that's actually quite common and more easily seen in lighter coloured animals, particularly lighter coloured dogs. If you've ever seen a lighter coloured dog with kind of brown or red staining to the fur, it's often because of lick staining, and that just means that animal's licking quite a lot. So if you see them with brown or red paws, or brown or red kind of like underneath the belly, it's often because they're licking that area. So that's one sign. Another sign obviously is itching, but it can sometimes be a little bit less pronounced than what you would think. So scratching the sides, rubbing the bottom, scratching their ears a lot. And actually one of the reasons that animals have quite frequent ear infections, which I'll get into in another video, is because of allergies. So if they're continually itchy, they're very frequently getting ear infections, that can be a sign of itchy skin as well, or an itchy skin disorder. So those are kind of the most common signs and symptoms, alongside just being generally itchy. So what are some of the main reasons that a dog or cat can be itchy? One of the most common causes for itchy skin is actually fleas. Now, even if you can't see fleas on your animal, doesn't always mean that a flea hasn't caused the itchiness. Some animals are even quite allergic to fleas. It can be even if a dog's gone on a walk or a cat's gone out and about and fleas have jumped on them outside, bitten your animal, and some animals can be quite allergic to it, so even a couple of bites can send them into a real itchy state, and then jumped off them or jumped off into your house. Just because you can't see them doesn't always mean they're not there and not a cause of the itch. So I would always recommend, especially in an itchy animal, to just rule out fleas first and foremost, because that is something that you can do whilst you're doing other things, or trying to treat the itch. So yeah, so the first thing is you definitely want to use a veterinary strength flea product, and not just on the animal that's itchy. You want to treat the whole house. Any animal in your house that can get fleas needs to be treated with a veterinary strength flea product. That's usually any animal with fur, or your furless cats, still treat them. But yeah, so first off, flea treat the whole house. Second, you want to flea treat your house as well. So unfortunately, fleas that live on your animal jump off your animal and can live in your house as well, but then also the eggs can survive in your house for a very long time. So even if you think you have treated your animal, Any eggs that are in your house can then pop up over the next few months and reinfect your animal. And then you'll see fleas again and wonder why the flea treatment didn't work. But it's actually because the house has also not been treated. So you need to treat the house as well. Now, before you treat the house, it's good to do a lot of hoovering, because that helps the treatment be more effective. You know, you're hoovering up any potential eggs or things like that. And then you also want to hot wash bedding, hot wash any soft furnishings. You know, if you can take the lining off your sofa and if it can be safely washed, your bedding, your pet's bedding, anything like that, soft toys potentially that can be washed, just anything that can be hot washed. Wash that as well, because that also helps to kill flea eggs, things like that. And then once you've done your hoovering, your hot washing, that's when you want to treat your house. And then after you've treated the house and your pet, you ideally want to keep up to date with your veterinary strength flea product, at least at the beginning, just in case any have managed to survive. You don't want to end up in a case where you've spent all that money, your animal's no longer itchy, you know, everyone's really happy, and then a couple of months down the line, if any have managed to survive somehow, or equally just going out on a walk or meeting the friends, more fleas have jumped onto your animal, you just want to keep preventing fleas, basically. So keep up with that veterinary flea treatment. So another common reason for itchiness is allergies. Now, in our dogs and cats with allergies, they don't tend to sneeze or get runny eyes or nose like we do. The most common sign actually of allergies in our animals is itchy skin. So if we've ruled out fleas, but yet our animal is still quite itchy, then allergies is another really common reason why they can. Now, to actually diagnose an allergy, a vet would have to do some allergy tests, and that either involves a blood test or a little bit like humans, where you can have little pinpricks in the skin and then they look at the allergic reaction to that. So that's really good. You know, both of those methods are good for environment allergies. But for food allergies, it's actually a little bit more difficult and a little bit more involved. We need to do something called a food trial, which I will go more into in a future video. But basically, the easiest way to do that is to put your dog or cat onto something called a hydrolyzed diet. So what that is everything's been broken down so much, you know, the protein and carbohydrates have been broken down so much into individual components, basically, that no animal can be allergic to them. You slowly move them onto it over a week or so, just so they don't get an upset tummy. And then you keep them really strictly on that, really strictly on it for about 12 weeks. So unfortunately, no human food, no treats, no, not even flavored worming tablets. You have to be really strict as to what else you're giving them. You know, no strangers coming up and feeding them something, you know, for those 12 weeks. And then if you see a difference in those 12 weeks, then your animal possibly then has a food component to the allergies. And then after that, if you want to try and find out what component it is, you slowly, kind of every 3 weeks, add a new ingredient. So week 1 to 3 would be chicken. Week 3 to 6 would be peas. You know, and slowly go through that way. And if you notice an increase in your itchiness whilst you've added that new ingredient, then you can be, you know, start to think, are they allergic to that ingredient? You take that ingredient away for kind of like 3 weeks, and if the itchiness reduces or goes, then you can be pretty happy that that ingredient causes a problem. So that, in a nutshell, is how we do a food trial, but it does take a lot longer, but it is something worth doing, because if your dog or cat does have a food allergy, then you can make the rest of their life less itchy if we get them on the correct food. So what are some of the things that we can do briefly to help a dog with allergies? Well, number one, I would always recommend an omega-3 fatty acid skin supplement. There's lots out there, but I would have a look at them. Studies have proven over the long term, if animals are on that regularly long term, it helps to moisturize the skin from the inside out, which makes them less likely for allergies to kind of get through dry skin and cause them to be itchy. So it is worth doing. It's a supplement, it's not going to do any harm. There's lots of brands out there, so you just need to see and find one that works well for you. And then I would always say, you know, relatively regularly, you don't want to do it too regularly, but say like once a fortnight, something like that. Wash your dog in a very moisturizing shampoo, so with fragrance free, so something that contains like oatmeal or something like that. And it works in a similar way to omega-3 supplements. It really moisturizes the skin so that it's less dry and more able to cope with allergies that are kind of sitting on the skin. You know, if you've got a really nice moisturized skin, those allergies are less likely to kind of irritate. But if you've got quite dry, cracked, dry skin, allergies, you know, it's just your animal's more likely to be itchy. So definitely a moisturizing shampoo, but not too regularly. And then it is also a good idea, you don't need to wash them, but after a walk, wipe down your animal's paws and underside with a damp cloth. So you're not washing them, you're not, you know, putting anything on there, literally just a wrung out damp cloth with just plain tap water. Because again, if they're out and about and say they're allergic to grass or they're allergic to something outside, they've been walking and romping, you know, through it all day, enjoying the life, and then they come back in and they've got microscopic allergens, so microscopic bits of pollen or grass that you can't see on their skin, and it just sits there undetected. You don't know it's there, your animal doesn't know it's there, but it sits there, and that creates irritation because your animal's allergic to it. The longer it sits there, you know, the more likely they are to get irritated. Whereas if you, after a walk, just wipe them down, you're removing that allergen, or you're removing a good proportion of them. And over time, you know, that makes them less itchy, and it's a really simple thing to do. So after a walk, you know, wiping down the paws or their underside, anywhere that might have been in contact. You don't need to do the whole animal, but you know, the areas that may have been in contact will really help as well. Another big cause of itchiness, especially in cats, is stress. Now, stress can come in a lot of different forms, a lot of different causes, and sometimes, unfortunately, it can be something really simple that we wouldn't even have thought would have caused stress in our animal. For example, roadworks being done nearby, or a neighbour or yourself doing housework. Your animal can hear it, there's a lot of coming and goings, it's quite stressful. Things like a new cat in the neighbourhood, or a cat that is continually fighting with your cat, that can be very stressful. A new addition to the household, whether that's a new person or a new baby, new pet, that can all be very stressful to your animal, especially if they don't get along. For example, a new cat doesn't get along with your current cat. These are all quite stressful, and one of the ways your pet can respond to that is by over grooming. So fixating on grooming themselves, particularly grooming particular areas, which is different for each pet. So it could be the sides of the belly or near the tail. They can just fixate on an area and really over groom, and that over grooming then causes the fur to be pulled out or come out, or redness in that area as well. So that is another cause of itching, really. We see it as itching because the animal's always nibbling and licking themselves. Now that one can be a little bit more tricky to resolve because it does depend on what is causing the stress in the first place. So you have to try and think about some things that just could be a little bit out of the ordinary for your animal, or could be a source of distress, and then trying to resolve that. Obviously that will help. Other things you can do to help are having lots of hiding places, especially if it's a cat, having more food, water bowls, litter trays than cats. So if you have 2 cats, ideally you'd have 3 or more food, water bowls and litter trays, and ideally in different areas. That's because your cat is a little bit like a tiger, and it really likes to know that it's got its resources, it's got its food, it's got its water, it doesn't have to share. And if the other animal or stressful situation is near food or water, they know that they've got somewhere else to go in the house, and that they're fine, basically. So that has been actually really proven to reduce stress in cats in particular. So I would try and do that, as well as having lots of hiding places. Trying to keep a routine. You know, animals like routine, they like knowing where they are, what's happening. So trying to keep a routine in their day-to-day life. And then you can do other things, so things like stress supplements or plugins, you know, of herbal or manufactured hormones to try and reduce stress. Feliway is a really good one for cats, so you can maybe have a look at that as a plug-in. But yeah, so those are some ways to reduce stress. And again, going back to flea treating, because if someone's stressed and they're over grooming, plus they have fleas which are quite itchy, the problem just compounds. So even if it's not flea related, it's still worth treating for fleas. And then finally, skin infections can be another cause of itchy skin. Skin infections it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. Sometimes they get skin infections because they've been itchy due to another reason, for example allergies or fleas, and then over grooming, licking away at the skin has then caused a skin infection. So sometimes, you know, they get a skin infection because of another reason that's caused them to be itchy, or sometimes they get a skin infection and that's just the only reason they're itching, because the skin's infected. So obviously a vet would be able to help with that a little bit more, you know, after seeing them. But some of the signs of a skin infection are red, inflamed skin, quite moist skin, particularly like in between the toes. You know, if it's quite red and moist and sticky. We can get areas of what's called papules, which are little tiny raised red dots on the skin, or pustules is another word, which is a little bit like a spot if you think about it, a little raised whitehead, so a little pimple basically, and sometimes crusting as well around it, so crusting skin basically. So a vet would be able to diagnose a skin infection on exam, And then it does depend. So some minor skin infections resolve to topical treatment. They don't always need antibiotics. So chlorhexidine based soothing dog shampoos, for example Petrivet or Deoxypio, as prescribed and advised by your vet. Sometimes topical treatment. Sometimes you do need antibiotics, and a vet would be able to decide whether your animal is one that needs antibiotics, and if so, they'll prescribe a course, and it's usually a combination of that and topical treatment. But if you're suspecting a skin infection, it's always worth seeing a vet, because they can sometimes get quite serious or out of hand or difficult to treat. So any kind of suspect of that, it's always worth going to your vet. And just to add to that, so some dogs with folds, so things like bulldogs, Shar-Peis, things like that, folds on the face, or sometimes quite dense skin in between the toes, can also quite easily get infected as well. So especially if they get quite moist, or kind of like tears are running down through it, things like that, it is worth regularly to try and prevent an infection, keeping them clean and dry. So again, a chlorhexidine based wipe is quite good at preventing infections. You don't want to use them over regularly, but when it's moist or dirty, cleaning it with something like that, and making sure that it's regularly dried, and that you're inspecting them daily if you can, just to make sure they're not getting really red, really sore, because they are an area for skin infection and irritation.